4. All right, 3, 2, 1. Good evening, dear friends. At long last, we're able to have our final discussion number 6, meditation from Sinai. I know we've been on this for many weeks now, and we had a few delays. And I want to thank you all for your patience to stick with us and make sure we could get together for our final installment, meditation from Sinai. Some of you I know couldn't make it. A few people messaged me the different conflicts, and so we're recording this, and we say hello into the future. Those that will be joining us in a few hours or days or weeks. We're grateful to have you along for the ride. You know, they tell the story about the priest, the minister, and the rabbi who had a competition to see who was the most charismatic and compelling at their job. And so they decided they're going to have a contest with a bear. Each is going to try to convert a bear in the wild. Again, in Florida, thankfully, we don't have too many bears. But up north, they decide they're going to go into the wilderness and meet up and report on their progress. A week later, the priest comes and says, you know, I found the bear. I sprinkled some holy water. And you're not going to believe it, next week, he's going to have his first communion. And everyone applauds. The minister says, you know, I preached. He was so mesmerized that I was able to baptize him. They wheel the rabbi in on a stretcher. He's wearing a body cast. And they say, hey, Rabbi, what happened? He says, well, you know, in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have tried circumcision as the first mitzvah on this bear. Oh, well, anyways.
Ouch.
The bear wasn't appreciative. All right. Well, I'm excited that you're here with me today. And for our final session on meditation, we saved the best for last. And just want to give a fast recap, a fast refresher, because it's been a few weeks since we've done this, and it's been many weeks since we started our mission to explore Jewish meditation.
You could hear, right?
So we talked about 3 types of meditation. And well, we could divide it as, well, we have 3 different types of meditations or cognitive exercises. We had hitbodedut, which we described as the meditation or the meditative process of seclusion, quieting the voice, the noise around, if you remember, quieting the voice within our mind to allow the spiritual voice, to allow the neshama to shine forth. That was hitbodedut. And we described that this is something not everybody is able to really channel. We then described hitbonenut. That was a meditative process of cognitively reviewing, attaching, or reviewing and strongly identifying with the spiritual truths. We described how there is a divine energy that flows through the universe, that creates the universe, that creates time and space, and the fact that we are here close to God's purpose, and God chose us and this time for a reason. All of that deep contemplative meditation, feeling spirituality. Again, Judaism being a religion is going to put a premium on spirituality, and it has it through the prism of Jewish ideas. And then lastly, we had kavanah, which is the most familiar. We described as a meditative process of focusing on a specific idea, and it allows us and assists us in moderating our emotions. If you recall, we could think about something positive. We could displace negative thoughts by focusing and emphasizing on positive thoughts, and thus helping moderate our mood. We can also elevate mundane experiences, which is what we described last time we met, that when we realize that every moment is really divine and a gift, we can have an elevated appreciation in every moment and appreciate that we were destined, we were led to be at any given place at a given time, giving a lot of purpose, focus, and meaning to our day-to-day interactions. Meditation can be defined in many ways. And actually in the course of our discussions, both with some of the folks that are on here today and some of our friends who will be joining us sooner on the recording, we've discussed that there are many different definitions for meditation. But what we have in common, the common thread throughout all meditative forms are that it starts within the mind. It's a mind exercise. Ira, welcome. You saw my text. I told you that. Okay, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to everybody that's joining us within the room and to all the many folks that are joining us on Zoom. It's great to have you all. Today, we're going to change things up a bit. So we described that meditation is mostly a cognitive exercise. And in the Jewish paradigm, there's going to be an action orientation. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Today, we're going to talk about the nexus of meditation and action and the way certain movements and actions can actually create or enhance our meditative state. So I want to start with a little survey. Oh, Erica's not on. I want to invite whoever has a book, please join us, page 182. And I just want you to review this. Oh, Ira, if you would like a book, you don't need a book, it'll be fine. I'd like you to review this exercise. We'll just read it together and you could even shout it out. It's a small enough group or whatever. On the scale of 1 to 5 rather, please estimate the centrality of each of the following to Judaism. So 1 to 5, how central is action to Judaism? You just shout it out.
5.
5. Any other, Ira? 5? Okay. Any other numbers? Karen, welcome on board. Good to see you. Values, 1 to 5.
What's it? 9.
5. So Judaism, we're getting a consensus. Values, action. And values is very much connected to what we describe as our Judaism. What about faith? 1 to
5.
Well, we're getting a lot of 5s here. All right. Lastly, mindfulness, 1 to 5.
5.
5. Anyone else?
5.
All right. We're knocking this out of the park. We're getting a bunch of 5s.
Incriminate myself by saying 5.
You're not incriminating yourself, but you don't have to agree. All right. So we're getting a lot of 5s on all these items. But the point that I want to make is that everybody here after our course and after much study, we've concluded that mindfulness gets a 5. But I want to tell you something. If we would do a man on the street kind of interview, we take a TV camera and a reporter, and we would stop average folks. And let's say people that attend the synagogue occasionally, and we would ask them 1 to 5, where does meditation and mindfulness rate? I don't want to disappoint you guys. Or actually, you shouldn't be disappointed. We did well. But many would probably place it closer to a 2, a 1, a 2, a 3. It's rare that people will associate mindfulness and meditation with a 5. And in the course of our discussion, I'll explain why you all were right and those folks on the streets were absolutely wrong. And I don't suppose you're surprised to hear this, but we'll make it a little more Lynn, you wanted to say?
Rabbi, maybe they didn't take this class and they didn't experience it or understand how important mindfulness is.
Lynn,
They're not aware.
I'm grateful you said that. Lynn is saying that probably the man on the street wasn't privileged enough to join our elite group in this fantastic discussion, and so they wouldn't know better. So we don't blame them. We would just advise them to sign up for a rerun, or maybe they could take a look at the recordings online and help be oriented. But before I make our point, I want to make a counterpoint. Is that all right?
Sure.
I want to give a little bit of defense to those who would say that mindfulness does not rate up at a 5. And so here we go. And we're going to start. We're going to start with text 1. But I want to describe, or I want to explain to you why many people don't think that that mindfulness is so central to Judaism. Judaism, in contrast to other faiths, the case can be made is not only a religion, but it's a very code-oriented religion. There is a code of conduct, and it is very action-oriented. I'll prove my point. The Bible has, and those that do the Parsha discussion group, we know that there are and other groups we've discussed this too. There are 613 different mitzvot, 613 different commandments. The Torah takes behavior, action very seriously. You know, in Judaism, we all, or many of us, had a Seder. And at that Seder, we did a lot of different actions and steps. Now, look, everyone's Seder probably looked a little different, but there is a focus on certain actions that are necessary to be considered, necessarily part of the Jewish experience. And to many, we wouldn't blame folks for thinking that, well, meditation might be a nice cherry on top, but Judaism seems to be more about a checklist of items to do. And again, while I'm about to disagree with this, I want to draw your attention to page 183, text 1. It's a short text.
You see it?
Page 183. Erica, welcome on. Are you here with us?
Yeah.
I'm so happy you could join, and I'm happy you finally, I hope you got your book.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I'm happy to hear that. I'm sorry it took so long. Text 1, page 183. Again, we're in lesson 6. I'm going to say it in Hebrew. Hama'aseh, I'm sorry, lo hamidrash ikar, ela hama'aseh. The essential thing is not study, it is action.
Mhm.
What happened?
Nothing.
The main thing of Judaism is not the study, it's not the theory, it's not the thoughts, it is the action. But what we're going to talk about today is that for an action to work, there's got to be a meditation. There's got to be an awareness. There's got to be a kavanah, as we've come to call it. And number 2, you know what I want to say? Actions of the mitzvot themselves have a kavanah contribution. They actually help orient our minds. And this may come to you as a surprise. You may be wondering, Rabbi, are you just trying to hawk mitzvahs today? I wouldn't blame you for thinking that. But I'll show you shortly. You'll see how that all works. I'm just going to temporarily hit mute all, and then I'm going to unmute because I'm going to want to hear a lot of participation. And you also have the ability to unmute if you have any questions, and I don't seem to be noticing. So I'm just going to hit mute all, and then please unmute for any comments and discussions. So here we go. Judaism places a lot of emphasis on action. Let me ask you a question. I want you to think about this. Friday night, and if you take the lesson in the Rosh Chodesh Society with Shana, you know this, or maybe you're just have a, maybe you've seen other women do this, or maybe you do this yourself. There's something many Jewish women do. They light Shabbat candles Friday night. And it's a mitzvah. It's a way of honoring the Shabbat. I'm sure many of you do. Many of you know people that do it. What would happen if you come home Friday night and you want to have a candlelight dinner with a friend? And so you light candles. And then you realize afterwards, hey, that's so funny. It's Friday night. We actually lit candles for Shabbat. Does that count in your opinion? Raise your hand if you think that counts for Shabbat candles. All right. Now I want to ask you to unmute and explain why you're shaking your head no. And we'll have a few opinions, so we'll try to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be heard. I want to hear why you're saying no.
I'll say, for me, it's because you're not doing it with purpose.
So Karen is saying, I think we're all going to agree that if you lit the candle just because it created a certain environment, but not because of actual doing a mitzvah, well, you're saying that's not a mitzvah. There was no intent. Anyone else want to add to that? Barbara, you want to add something to that?
I was just going to use those exact words. There was no intent. There was no kavana. No
And
kavana.
Also, I would like to say that when you light the Shabbat candles and you pray, you can pray
Yes.
for whatever you want. And that didn't take place. In other words, I pray for my family, my friends, that they're well. So none of that happened.
So Lynn, I want to translate what you just said. The whole neshama, the whole soul, the whole experience of the mitzvah of the Shabbat candles, for example, is about a moment of reflection and a moment of prayer, a moment of peace, ushering in Shabbat, and missing that intention, missing that mind engagement, missing those micro meditations. I'm calling them micro just because, we have this like very dramatic sense of what a meditation looks like, but it's a meditative moment. And that's missing. And that would be very strongly in sync with what we said, although, or actually, no, we're going to see in a moment, which is that although we think of all the mitzvot, the commandments, as actions, but it is essential that there be a corresponding intention. As a matter of fact, there is a lot of discussion. Ooh, we're gonna have a little background noise here. It's raining. As a matter of fact, there are a few exceptions. I just want to bring up the exceptions before we get onto our main point. If you lose $1, the dollar falls out of your pocket and a homeless person finds the dollar. Did you do a mitzvah or not? I'm just here to confuse things up a little bit. So I want to tell you something surprising, but this is the exception, not the rule.
Well, it was an accidental mitzvah.
It was an accidental mitzvah. So
Right.
although we're discussing, and I'm going to give more words about why intent is so important for a mitzvah, kavana, mindfulness, and awareness that we're actually doing a mitzvah. And there are other meditative moments in a mitzvah that maybe you haven't even considered. But there is an exception. There's an asterisk in this conversation. And I just wanted to bring it up because it happens sometimes. If in the Jewish tradition, if you do a mitzvah by mistake,
Mhm,
but someone else benefits from it,
mhm.
you get the credit.
It's
So if you
still a
lose,
mitzvah.
yeah. So if you lose a $5 bill and a homeless person buys a sandwich and a drink, or I'm being optimistic and positive that they're buying good, healthy, constructive things. And so you did a mitzvah.
Mhm.
And even though you didn't intend to do it, you get the credit. But most mitzvot are more about us having an opportunity to connect to a higher power, to our identity, to our people. And those are all absolutely need to be infused with kavanah. So back to our Shabbos candles. As Lynn and Karen and Barbara and everyone else is nodding their head, to do the Shabbos candles right, there needs to be kavanah. In most other cases, this is the same. The same works as well. For a mitzvah to work, there has to be kavanah. I want to now draw your attention, and soon I have to update the slides. I'm seeing everybody here, and I'm working with the multitasking. So, anyways, text number 2. This is from the Code of Jewish Law. This is about as authoritative as it gets. You want to know what the Jewish law is? You got to go to the Code of Jewish Law, page 185. Much of modern, and when I say modern, I mean 500 years of Jewish practice, is informed by the Code of Jewish Law. And this is a text about intent. Page 185, text 2. To fulfill a mitzvah obligation, we must actively intend to observe the mitzvah. Therefore, if we observe a mitzvah unwittingly, or for a purpose other than to perform a mitzvah, we have not fulfilled the mitzvah at all. Some authorities disagree and apply that mitzvahs don't need intention. The final law is with the form.
There's an exception.
The bottom line is that the Jewish tradition asserts that a mitzvah, to be a mitzvah, needs to have kavanah, needs to have intention. So although, just to remind you of our discussion, although Judaism does appear and genuinely is highly action-oriented, it's not action with the exception of intention. It's not action with the exception of mindfulness, kavanah, meditation. It's just that sometimes where our mind is not enough. There needs to be the anchoring of our deep, rich emotional feelings with action. Funny thing is, recently in shul over the Passover, at a few occasions, I actually had conversations and presentations that were along these lines. Ira, the Tanya recently is talking all about the kavanah and action. So, well, here, let me just tinker with my screen for a moment. Here, so meditation, the purpose, the effort to purposefully focus our mind and develop a deeper awareness to achieve a desired result. So meditation is about achieving a desired result, and there's the nexus of our actions. So if this doesn't describe the Jewish definition of actions with mindfulness, with kavanah, I don't know what does. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm just. Yeah. So this is our question now, just catching up on the slides. If so, if a mitzvah has no action, has it been fulfilled?
No,
No. So that's the question. Has the mitzvah been fulfilled?
no, it
Do we
needs
say
action.
that purpose is beyond the behavior? And no, intention is very much integral to the action of the mitzvah, as we just said. Okay, so now we're going to talk about why. Why is that so? So essentially, the mitzvah has two sides. We need to have the action, but there also needs to be the kavanah. And here is why. Before I continue, another open question. Shout out. What does mitzvah really mean? Give me a one word for mitzvah.
Commandment.
Commandment. Anyone have another word for mitzvah? That was not wrong, but I want to hear another word.
Doing God's work.
Doing God's work. Love it. Any other words?
A good deed.
Good deed. So we have commandment, God's work, good deed. There's one more word that I'm looking for.
Law.
Following the Torah.
I'm sorry?
Following the Torah.
Following the Torah. Okay. So I'm going to throw out another word.
Helping.
Helping. Yes, yes, yes. All of these are true, but there's another word which ropes them, which wraps them all together. Connecting. Connection.
Well, you're
A
connected.
mitzvah,
God will do
in
it.
Hebrew, the word mitzvah means commandment, but it could also be associated with a word that means connection. Why is a mitzvah a connection? It sounds more like a list of to-dos than connection. So let's see. Why is a mitzvah a connection? The answer is very simple. Karen, I suppose you've given this some thought. God, the creator who we've described in the course of our discussion, a creator of time and space, who exists beyond time and space, and is yet infused through our universe, is so great. And many of us probably say this. What right do we have to think we have a relationship with God? And who do we think we are that we could get God's attention? We're nobodies. I don't mean we're nobodies, but I mean we could tell ourselves that relative to God, we're nobodies. And so interestingly enough, you wouldn't be wrong for saying that, except that this infinite God in his great kindness gives us a gift, the gift of connection. And the gift of connecting is through mitzvot. God says, hey, would you mind doing me a favor and light those Shabbat candles? And although I'm so much greater than you, I will consider that act as something worthy of my appreciation and attention. And so the word mitzvah is not just what God commands us. It's God giving us tools to tap into and to feel connected to the divine. And so a mitzvah is the connection between a human being and the one who gave that commandment. And as a matter of fact, again, mitzvah is like savta. And so, for example, think about maybe in your work, maybe you were an intern at a big corporation, and the big CEO was very intimidating and way beyond your reach. But if he were to walk over to you and say, hey, you do me a favor, do you mind handing me that pen? Or would you mind helping me out over here for a moment? All of a sudden, the person who's entirely out of your universe, now you feel like, wow, we've had a moment. I'm not invisible. And the mitzvot are ways for us to realize God tells us, you're not invisible. I see you and I value the connection. I'm going to tell you how to make it happen. Now, every day. Well, God gives it to us in the Torah, and every day God is waiting and giving us opportunities to connect. And so now let's talk about, so let's say God gave, bear with me. I'm not, by the way, you don't even have to agree with me. I just want to explain to you how Judaism explains and understands this. Now, if that's so, let me ask you a question. Let's say you're in a relationship with a loved one or a parent or a child. Well, let's talk about a spouse or personally, you're in a romantic relationship. So sometimes people that are in a romantic relationship buy or give, let's say, flowers. And that could come from, that should be and is an expression of deep emotional attachment and appreciation. There's a lot of beauty in flowers and a lot of expression and the type of bouquet and how it's put together. But let me ask, so, right, so a flowers might be a very well received gesture. Or if it's not flowers, it's balloons or a card or whatever. But what happens if you by mistake, someone handed you, you were like distracted and busy, and someone handed you a bouquet of flowers, then you handed it off to the person that you love? Would that have a lot of meaning if they noticed that you didn't even really intend to hand those flowers to them? If someone hands you a parcel and you're like so distracted, you hand it to the person next to you, and it happens to be a beautiful bouquet of flowers, would would you appreciate that? Or
No.
would you expect that to be appreciated? No, why not?
No.
You did. You did the act of handing flowers to the person you appreciate or love. Why doesn't that count?
Because the person didn't value it if they just didn't bother to check it out, look at it, smell the flowers. The person just gave it to somebody else.
Because the flowers is a gesture.
It was not appreciated.
Well, I'm talking about that the person, the giver didn't. If the person who's giving the flowers did it like absent-mindedly, so that the person that's giving the flowers did it in an absent-minded way, without even intending to give the flowers. So then it's devoid of all of the deep emotional respect and love and admiration and appreciation and the time and attention given to the person who you appreciate. And so that would not really be a win. That would not advance your, that would not,
yeah,
that wouldn't do much to advance a relationship. Let's
right.
Well, if a person does an action, but it's not accompanied, a mitzvah now with God. If a mitzvah is all about having a deep, meaningful connection with God. Well, if we do it haphazardly, without any intention, without any mindfulness, without any meditation beforehand, well, then how deep and meaningful is that for God? How deep and meaningful is that for us?
It's not.
It's not. And that's why meditation, mindfulness, kavana is so essential to mitzvot.
Yes.
You know, there's a very interesting book. Maybe you've seen it. I actually haven't read it, but I've heard about it a lot from different people for many, many years. There's a book called The 5 Love Languages. Are you familiar with that?
No.
5 Love Languages. After this class, I would suggest just for your own curiosity, you can Google it. There's probably like videos that recap it or whatever. So the theory is as follows. People generally receive or primarily appreciate and receive love. Well, everyone receives love and experiences it in different ways. And so the theory is there are 5 different primary categories of conveying and receiving love. 1 is words of affirmation. 2 is spending quality time. 3 is receiving gifts. 4 is physical touch. And 5 is acts of service. I'm not going to give a lot more of a summary because I wouldn't do justice to it. But the idea is that different people really experience the depth of a relationship differently in one of these 5 ways. Again, affirmation, quality time, gifts, physical touch, or acts of service. And so a mitzvah might be described as a kind of act of service. We're doing something for God. Hashem asked us, hey, would you mind lighting the Shabbos candles? I don't mean to keep on harping on the same example, but it's a nice one and it's so beautiful. Would you mind lighting the Shabbos candles? When we do that, we are not only gifting ourselves with a beautiful moment, we're not just gifting ourselves with something very special and a moment to think about our family and our loved ones and ourselves, but we're also doing something to develop and deepen a relationship with our Creator, with God. And God gives us the terms because usually the dominant or more powerful or more knowing partner gets to, at least in this context, gets to dictate that to us. And when we get it right, that's a big win in a big way to advance our relationship with God. You know, sometimes, you know, there's chores around the house or something that's important to you, and you'll ask your spouse or your loved one to do it. And maybe they don't care for it so much, but because of their deep appreciation and love, hopefully they'll get to that chore. And if it's done purely because you asked for it, well, then in addition to the item getting done, there's something very meaningful and special that the person cared enough to do what you asked.
Right.
But if that very same act would happen again by mistake, it would be enough. It wouldn't be worth very much because Just like in a meaningful relationship, there needs to be intention to really move things along. Well, if a mitzvah is about a relationship with God, well, then similarly, there needs to be the intention, the kavanah, the mindfulness. So let's talk one more example. Matzah. Matzah is one of the things we eat on Passover. It's a
Mhm.
mitzvah. If you eat matzah and you have in mind, and again, if you didn't do it this year, I'm going to encourage you to do it next year. There's another year. We eat matzah and we have in mind, wow, this is not just a beautiful ritual. This is a mitzvah. God commands in the Bible that the Jewish people will eat matzah. We take a moment to say, wow, when I eat this matzah, I'm doing something God asked the Jewish people thousands of years ago, and we continue to maintain this connection till this day. Well, that's very powerful. And that's why the ethics of our fathers tell us the reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah, which they mean to say the reward of the mitzvah is the relationship. We do a mitzvah, we have a relationship and a deepened relationship with Hashem. And this is why intention is important. Now, until now, we've only talked about a theological reason why an intention would be necessary when doing a mitzvah. But I want to tell you more than that. So first, let's take a look over here. Just another sign. God's desire for a mitzvah helps make us relevant in his universe. Without God asking to do something, well, we wouldn't really have any tools that we would know of to get God's attention. By him giving us a roadmap of suggestions. And sometimes in a relationship too, it's good to tell the person that this could be parents and kids, or a spouse, or a friend. Sometimes the smart thing is to inform the other person, this would be very meaningful for me. That's sometimes a good idea. And so, imagine this is the dying bouquet. I'm imagining this is like lighting doing something without intention, but all of a sudden you bring intention and you breathe in this beautiful life into the moment. And the deeper the feeling, the greater the impression you have, and the greater the connection is between you and the person you're loving or the being you're loving. In this context, Hashem. And this is why mindfulness is so important. And now I'm going to tell you, and this is, even if you don't like what I'm saying, or maybe you don't even like the idea of mitzvot connecting to God, now I'm going to teach you something very important and central to Judaism. What do you do before you do a mitzvah? You can shout it out. What do you do before doing a mitzvah?
Think about what you're going to do.
You think
Say a
about it.
blessing.
What else?
Say a
Did
bracha.
Nissim? Oh,
Say a
Nissim got it. Nissim said in Jewish tradition, before doing a mitzvah, you make a bracha. So you light the candles, there's a blessing. According to the traditional way of executing mitzvah. Again, everyone has their own way of, but in the Jewish tradition, there's a mitzvah. You make on Friday night, you make kiddush, which is a mitzvah, you make a blessing. What else?
Wait a minute, but if you're doing something for somebody, like let's say you're making a donation or giving something to somebody, do you always make a bracha over that?
No, actually, Lynn,
No.
as usual, you're on target. You're on the ball. Not every mitzvah has a bracha.
Right.
Mitzvahs that are about like interpersonal,
Yeah.
there's no bracha, because that would be rude.
Right.
Imagine, Lynn, imagine you're my friend and I'm doing you a favor and you ask me for, I don't know, a bottle of milk. So I come over and bring you a bottle of milk. I'm like, Lynn, before I give you this milk, I got to make a blessing.
No, I know. We don't do that.
We don't do that.
No.
You're right. We don't do that. So interpersonal mitzvot, generally there is no blessing. And actually that's a good thing, because that would be very insulting if we're doing a favor and all of a sudden we're mumbling a bracha. But ritual mitzvot, candle lighting, the challah, Shabbat, the reading the Torah, putting on the tefillin, affixing a mezuzah on the door,
Okay.
all of those, they get a blessing. Why is there a blessing? So now I'm going to teach you something that's going to sound obvious, but I think it's something that many people don't realize. The blessing is a moment and a reminder for mindfulness and meditation. A blessing is a call to mindfulness and a reminder that a mitzvah is an act between two parties, us and Hashem. And so what is a blessing? What is the typical template of a blessing? Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctified us with the commandment to do mitzvah X.
Mhm.
Thank you, God, for giving us this pathway to relate to you. That's what a blessing is. And we even say, well, anyways, yeah, that's what we say. So we do a mitzvah, we make a blessing. That is the meditation. That's the call to, the blessing is a call to mindfulness. You ever thought of it that way?
No.
So that's why we always discuss and learn something new. We're creating a moment of intimacy. We're saying, Hashem, I'm thinking about you.
Mhm.
And I feel thought about. And that's what's so important about a blessing. I'm going to play catch up here for a moment. I want you to join me on 186 for a moment, just to make the point I made verbally, but this is an important point. So I want to show it to you in the text. And then we'll go to the point I'm making now. 186. The word mitzvah means connection. Because the Aramaic word for tzavta, not savta like savta, tzavta with a tzaddik, that's like similar to the word mitzvah, means attach or connect. When a person does a mitzvah, we bond with God himself. And that's what the sages tell us. The reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah. But now I want to go to text 187. The inner significance of the blessing recited before a mitzvah. Blessed are you who sanctified us with his mitzvot. In Hebrew, the word for sanctified is kiddush, which is similar to the word betrothal. Because when we do a mitzvah, we are bound to God. This is not to say that God takes the place of romantic relationships, but just as a deep relationship between two people that love each other. Well, a similarly deep relationship exists between man and his creator. And so we when we study Torah, we do a mitzvah, we remind ourselves, God, you commanded us and you gave us this special connection between man and God. And so we unlock all of the intimacy, the deepness, and the specialness of a mitzvah by making a blessing, and more importantly, taking a moment to contemplate, to be mindful, and to meditate. And so therefore, in the blessing, we use words that are not precise, but reminiscent of the ideas of betrothal, describing a deep, rich connection. So mitzvot require meditation. That's the point we made thus far. Because a mitzvah is an emotional, deep way that a person connects with their creator, therefore there needs to be meditation, a feeling of connection, and the tool for that connection is the blessing. I want to tell you a humorous anecdote. In the pre-war shtetl, in the old country, so you had, and this exists today, but you don't see it. If a person, and maybe actually some of you told me you experienced this. If you had a chicken and you want to eat it, it needs to be prepared according to Jewish tradition. And so you had a shochet, and the shochet would ritually slaughter I don't want to get into them, would ritually prepare the animal, slaughter the animal for it to be eaten in a way that's meant to be the most humane. But it's also it's a mitzvah to, if a person is going to eat meat, it's a mitzvah that should be done in the most humane and ritual manner. And there's a blessing associated with certain with the ritual slaughter. So they tell a story. There was one ritual slaughterer who was very mystically inclined and it was in a deep meditative, a kind of person that was constantly going into a meditative state. And so he's a ritual slaughterer. He has the knife and he has the chicken and he's making the blessings. And he's so lost in his thoughts. And when he comes to and he makes the blessing, he says, "Oi, unvi is the hin. Where did the chicken go?" He was so lost in his thoughts.
Yeah. Mhm.
That he lost.
He
V
lost
is the hin. He lost
The chicken ran away.
the chicken ran away. So
Very good.
the point of the story, of course, is that there's a balance between the action and the mindfulness. The mindfulness doesn't have to come at the expense of the action, but in a balanced way, it's a very rich and powerful way for a human being to
Mhm.
connect with his creator. And that's
Right.
the first point of our discussion. Ira, yes?
Rabbi, I was just thinking about during prayer, when the minion has a certain speed. On the one hand, we know, especially in Hebrew, just saying the words is technically enough. On the other hand, according to this, if I'm capable of having more awareness, I'm really not fulfilling the potential of my prayers.
Yeah, so Ira's making a very important point. He's
Mhm.
saying that not only by a mitzvah do you need to have awareness, mindfulness, and kavana, but in prayer too. And people that pray every day, and they've been doing this since childhood in a synagogue, it's very easy for prayers to become almost like a rote that they just do. They just say a bunch of words. And Ira's saying that a person that has the capacity to bring mindfulness to prayer and isn't delivering their very best prayer. And that's 100% true. And I'm glad you brought that to our conversation, because it was one area that we didn't mention, and it's
Mhm.
important to mention. So in summation, if prayer, if Torah study, if a mitzvah is not just a random act, but it's something that expresses a deep connection to a loving, giving God, and it's God's gift to us to allow us to have a connection, well, then there needs to be mindfulness and meditation. And the blessing is, surprisingly or not surprisingly, a fantastic moment to have that mindful moment.
Mhm.
We are now going to totally shift. What? Yeah. I brought you Ziploc bags also. Yeah. Now we're going to turn everything on its side. Now we're going to go totally a different direction. Any questions about what we discussed about the mindfulness and the mitzvah?
Mhm.
If you're muted, you're welcome to unmute. If not, we'll pivot to the next, the opposite side of the same coin. All righty, here we go. You're going to actually like this. Until now, we've talked about how actions need to be infused with meditation. But now I want to remind you of the definition we gave for meditation. We described how meditation is something that happens in the mind, and it's primarily in the mind, and it affects our mindset and could have an effect on our actions. Well, what if I'll tell you that sometimes the action of the mitzvot themselves are, in a sense, meditations, meaning actions can mold, can inform and influence our minds themselves. In a way, the action is a meditation. Because again, meditation is to change something within us for the better. And a mitzvah has the ability not just to be an action our hands or feet or lips say, but actually make a change in our hands, and starting in our hands and to our hands. So we've described that mitzvot are good deeds. To summarize all the definitions we got, they are divine commandments, and they are acts of service that connect us with Hashem. But there's more to the story of a mitzvah. Do you know why God gave us these specific mitzvot? Not just because he allows us to have a relationship with him, but because they are good for us to do. They're good for us. Every mitzvah is like a pressure point, to help us raise our awareness and refine our character on another aspect of our being. Better than I can make the case. Let's take a look real fast. This is a very famous text, actually, from Nachmanides, Ramban, page 189, text 5. Our sages in the Midrash state that mitzvot were given only to refine the person. The purpose of mitzvot is not to help God, but to benefit humankind, to keep them safe from harm, to shield them from negative, toxic beliefs, from poor or base character traits, and to remind them of the miracles and wonders of the Creator, to help them know God. The Midrash uses the word saref, refining, which is usually used to describe the refinement of silver. This informs us that the mitzvot are a kind of purifying or refinement to our character, as a silversmith refines silver.
Mhm.
Just as we cleanse metals in a purposeful way, to remove the impurities. Similarly, the mitzvot are there to help us remove toxins, toxic beliefs, characteristics, and inform us of the truth and enable us to be mindful of the truth. Every mitzvah, and as a matter of fact, the Jewish thinkers of old divide the human body into 613 different, organs, limbs, and parts. And they are works that draw correlation between every mitzvah and another part of the body. But right now, we're not really talking about how it correlates to the body. We're talking about how it correlates to different facets of our mind, of our emotions, and the mitzvot are there to help us. And this is big news. This is a big headline that maybe we haven't considered, that the mitzvot are meant not just to allow us to connect to God. We don't just do it because we have to, but the assertion here is that they are actually good for us and mold us into better, more mature, conscientious human beings. In the word of Maimonides, in the Guide to the Perplexed, each of the 613 mitzvot exists to either communicate a correct perspective or to dismiss an unhealthy view, to help a person have a healthy mindset or to help a person avoid unhealthy mindset. So Judaism talks a lot about the importance of our mind, but now we're going to learn something else. And this is one of the most important, I know I keep on saying this, one of the most important quotations, one of the most important citations of this course, certainly on this topic. Page 191, text 7. This is from a work called Sefer HaChinuch. It's actually an anonymous text, meaning we know there are many theories who wrote it, but it's been in the Jewish tradition for close to 1,000 years, or 800 years, I would say. Here he writes, "And now, my child, I'll enlighten you to appreciate the Torah and the precepts. You are influenced by your behavior, and your feelings and thoughts consistently follow your actions, whether for the positive or the negative. Your actions have the power to overcome the negative inclination within you, since the attitude of your heart are influenced by your behaviors. We usually think that how we think influences how we behave. But ancient Jewish teachings and modern scientists concur that how we act can change what's going on inside. I'm sure you're all familiar with the different studies about smiling and how it affects your mood. Or maybe you've had to go into an important meeting and you straighten your shoulder, you pull back your shoulders and you allow yourself into a little bit of an alpha pose and maybe put on a smile. And sometimes doing those physical actions help channel and put us into a better perspective, a better mind frame, or better frame of mind. Well, Judaism says the action of the different mitzvot too can help mold and influence our character. This is massive. This is massive news. Action can actually help create a state of a healthier state of frame of mind, a healthier degree of mindfulness and conscientiousness. Sometimes we can think ourselves into change, but sometimes, or coupled with that, we need to act our way into change. And many times how we act is very influential. We smile and might start feeling happier. Dance, even if you're down, and allow your spirits to be somewhat lifted. It's a little bit of what we might describe as a hack. It's not how the system is meant to work per se. It's not how we imagine ourselves, but it's a fact. And I'm sure all of us have experienced this. Lynn, you wanted to say something?
No.
You know, they say fake it till you make it. Now, faking isn't always good, but sometimes we need to get ourselves into the right frame of mind, and action might be a good tool to implement. So instead of waiting for someone else to change our mood or trying to figure out a way to convince ourselves to change the mood, sometimes we just got to get up, get out, dance in the hallway of our buildings, especially if it's a quiet lobby, a hallway. And this is the dark horse of meditations. This is the unexpected meditation. We're talking meditation. It's all about what's happening in the mind. But all of a sudden, we're talking about how an action can help change what's going on in our lives. So I might call this the jump starting. What happens if our mind is not where it needs to be or we wish it to be? Well, sometimes we just got to fake it. Karen, do you agree with this?
Absolutely.
So I know you've given these ideas a lot of thought, which is why I value everyone's opinion, but it's why I value your take on these things.
Absolutely. And, it's very a positive, just your actions. I do it unconsciously. And even in my correspondences to people, sometimes they're so much more positive than I actually feel. And then I feel better because I said those words, like
Yeah.
I conveyed those words, than the words that really were in my mind.
Mhm.
It made the other person feel better, but it made me feel better as well.
I'll
That's
tell you,
true.
as a rabbi, I sometimes have to do this too, because you're not a robot, but sometimes you need to be in a mood that's able to be uplifting. People are looking to you for inspiration. You kind of have to just put yourself into that zone,
Right.
and
We all have to do that.
we all have to do that at
It's
different
very
times.
important. I mean, you could say things in different ways.
Yeah,
So you want to choose more of an uplifting way to say it.
and
And
I'll
many
show you.
times I write something, if I'm writing a text, and I say, no, 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 no. I change it too. And I say, no, I want to say it this way.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you this. I bet you salespeople have whole routines, and sports players, they have all these mishigas. Watch a football player and they have all these different crazy routines. It's not crazy. I think they're kind of doing the same thing. They're
Mhm.
hyping themselves up and they're allowing action and a projection of positivity, a projection of confidence to actually trickle into their own system. And so the same is for mitzvah. So just to recap for a moment, to go back just for a second, a mitzvah is for our benefit. We read in Ramban, they could keep us safe from harm if it's unhealthy or bad things to do, shield us from unhealthy beliefs, remind us of the miracle of our creators, and help us know God. So the question, of course, that we're talking about is what comes first, that good feeling or the mitzvah? And so until now, we thought that you got to feel a deep feeling of goodness and giving and graciousness, and then all of a sudden you'll be inspired to act. But today, what we're saying is sometimes it has to be the reverse.
Right.
So the mitzvot are meditations. The mitzvot are programs for our mind to help us be in a healthier, more positive frame. So, for example, charity. What is charity? What is tzedakah? Tzedakah can be repackaged as kindness meditation. We want ourselves to feel a sense of kindness. Well, then let's help that. Even if you're not feeling it, if you see that person who's hungry, buy him a sandwich, give it to him, and watch how that makes you feel all of a sudden
Absolutely.
like a more caring person.
Yes.
So it's not just that you give because you care, but you care because you give.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Again, going back to the sciences and politics have discovered this, where if you'll get a person to put up a lawn sign in support of a cause, a person will be more likely to contribute to that cause later on or making a statement of support. And so the idea is sometimes our actions really mold our minds. And so giving to others makes us a more giving person, not just because we just gave, but because we feel the joy of it and we help remind ourselves of the beauty of giving and the beauty of having and being able to help a recipient. You know what's interesting? The Talmud says, and this bothered me for a while, the Talmud says, as much as the recipient, talk about the poor person with the sandwich, as much as the person receiving the sandwich benefits, the giver of the sandwich benefits more. And I always thought that was a cliche. Maybe you tell that to the needy person so that they'll feel less bad taking. But I think it's real. I think it's true. That as the needy person needs the help, but we need the good, the wellness, the mensch. We need to feel good about ourselves. And we need to feel that goodness, and giving allows us to reach and activate that idea.
Right.
So giving instills kindness. And it's kind of like a meditation. We're training ourselves and our minds by giving. What about honoring parents? What do you think that might be a meditation for? The Torah in the 10 Commandments says to honor thy mother and father. What meditation might that be? Any thoughts?
Well, you're appreciating them.
Appreciation or gratitude?
Appreciation and gratitude for what they gave you,
It's a gratitude
or who
meditation.
they are, gratitude for who they are as people.
So let's be honest. Many times we fail to feel gratitude. And by the way, that means we're humans. We don't always fully appreciate what someone else has done for us. And to be
Right.
honest, the contribution our parents make in our lives is probably the most removed from the present moment because it starts at our youngest, at our infancy or before. And so exercising the act of honoring our parents is a way to remind ourselves and to inculcate and put in our mind the idea of gratitude, not only for parents, but also more broadly, gratitude for the people in our world, and especially for the people who do things to help us along our journey. We're all on a journey. And so that is the meditation that we might find in so kindness. You have the gratitude meditation. What about Shabbat? Any ideas what Shabbat, Karen?
I think Shabbat, the action of observing Shabbat, resonates with me, the connection I get with Hashem, with spirituality, with Yiddishkeit, just by doing it.
Beautiful.
So I do it and I feel even better, more connected.
And you're
Shabbat-
connected to people also, to
I'm sorry?
family. You're connected to people and
Connecting with ourselves, with our family, with
Mhm.
our first family, our second family,
Right.
all the important people in our lives.
Mhm.
And so the course here uses the word,
Creationism.
I don't know what that is. I would call it, I'm going to scratch that, faith, or
Okay. Yes.
connecting with the people in our world.
Yes.
There's another mitzvah, which is a men mitzvah, and I've explained before why. Tefillin. Tefillin is about alignment, trying to help men keep their minds and hearts in check. And that's what tefillin is about. And then you have mezuzah, which is about, I don't like this slide. I'm going to give you a different word. It's about awareness of divine or God in our world. You know what a mezuzah is? A mezuzah on our door is something subtle. Whenever we go into our house or go out, it's a reminder that there's a divine being. There's a long history of the Jewish people having this tradition.
Mhm.
And it's gotten us to, I shouldn't say it, we've gotten through a lot of tough times and good times. And it reminds us of an awareness of the presence of Hashem. And actually in the Bible, that is the meaning of the mitzvah of the mezuzah. By the way, there are some texts here, which I'm skipping over, 9, 10,
Rabbi,
11. I'm
Rabbi.
skipping them here, but I'm drawing your attention to them because you might want to take a look at them afterwards. It's essentially what I'm trying to paraphrase. But the mezuzah meditation, page 197, through observing this precept, whenever we enter or leave our homes, we encounter the symbol of God's unity, recall our love for him. This activity could shake us awake from our spiritual slumber and our obsession with material vanities and recognize that nothing we gain lasts forever except knowledge of the creator of the universe. So it's about a spiritual orientation, a mindfulness.
Rabbi, could I
Yes.
just say one thing?
Please.
Doesn't the mezuzah also represent a feeling of safety?
Yes.
Of comfort? Like people say, put a mezuzah on your door. It's comforting.
Yes.
And you feel
Represents,
safety.
it represents a kind of protection and safety. Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I share this. I don't know if you noticed, today's a little bit more of a relaxed style, and I'm grateful that you're allowing us that all of you are here and we're able to have this kind of more relaxed discussion. I remember seeing a story. It's actually a person that I was in yeshiva and rabbinic college with, and he became a Chabad emissary in one of the suburbs of Shanghai. I don't know if he's there now. I know during COVID, it's been a really rough place to be, but this is before COVID. So 3 years ago, he left town to Israel, where he's from. We were in Israel together. And when he comes back, the police are waiting for him. It's nervous. You don't want to be on the wrong side of the Chinese police. They come, we need to speak to you. Can we come into your house? You don't have a choice. They come in. They're looking all over. And they're muttering between themselves, and they talk to their rabbi. Say, Rabbi, why is nothing missing? Nothing missing. I mean, I just left for a few weeks to Israel, but why should anything be missing? They explained to him that the entire complex, all of the homes were burglarized. And the only home that wasn't burglarized was theirs. And he says, I don't know. If I think of anything, I will let you know. A few weeks later, they call him down to the station, and they put on the table in front of him pictures. They're photographs of the mezuzah. And they say, we know the burglars hacked the modern computerized security system, but this new Israeli technology, they couldn't hack. Please tell us what the technology is.
Oh my God.
So his house was saved
Yeah.
by the mezuzah.
Mhm.
But anyways, back to our point over here. All of the mitzvot, in addition to being actions that a Jew should do, and deeper, they're ways for a Jew to connect to Hashem. And when we do them, we should take a moment to make a blessing and remind ourselves of the message, of the values, of the themes that they convey. But they also can have a opposite effect to help orient our mindfulness back towards kindness, gratitude, faith, mindfulness, security, and the sense of spiritual presence and divine protection. And so mitzvot, as much as they need meditation, they also are a kind of meditation.
Rabbi,
Yes,
I love,
go ahead.
I wanted to say something.
Lynn, go
Rabbi,
ahead, Lynn, go ahead.
I love your definition of tefillin, but I've looked it up
Okay,
and it doesn't say what you say.
what does it
That
say?
it's men, well, you say it's the men need it and it keeps them more focused, and that the women are more focused than the men, and it sets them on the right track. But if you look up the definition of tefillin, it doesn't say that.
What
I
does it
love
say?
your, I love your definition. I don't know exactly what it says.
Yeah,
but
I don't want to be derailed now, but I'd love to follow up on that conversation, because I think
Oh,
if
it
you-
says molding. It says in this book, it says it molds thoughts in order to whatever.
Lynn, I don't want to spend too much time, but
But it's right. But
I
it
challenge
doesn't-
you.
but
No, I
love
challenge you.
your definition. I love it.
I challenge you to take a look at that definition and then compare with mine, and you'll
I
just see that I, over time, have developed a more artful way of saying, or maybe less artful way of saying the same thing.
Okay.
Take a look. I'm happy to discuss it further, and I'm glad that you brought it up. So in summation, our point here, and again, we've talked a lot about meditation, different types of meditation, and the effects of meditation on our emotion and on our mindfulness and on our presence and on our sense of purpose and our sense of spirituality. But today we've almost gone full circle, and we're talking about the nexus or the meeting of Jewish practice and meditation, and why, although Judaism does seem to talk more about action, how every action warrants a meditation, and how every action can also trigger a meditative process.
Mhm.
Sometimes the meditation is triggered by the mind. Sometimes the meditation needs to be jump-started by an action, which hopefully triggers a thoughtful follow-up process.
Mhm.
And so if you're a person who does a mitzvah, here's what we should do. Before doing the mitzvah, take a moment, pause, and think, what does this mitzvah mean to me? Why am I doing it? I shouldn't just do it because someone told me to. I shouldn't just do it because it's something I do. I'm going to do it because there's a lot of deep meaning. Number one, this is a tool for me to connect to Hashem. But for that to work, let me think about it. Wow, I'm connecting to God, to the eternal creator of heaven and earth. But there's more than that. Let's also think how this might help me develop my own my own character, my own sense of goodness, my sense of faith or kindness or compassion. And when we do that, the act of a Jewish ritual called mitzvah can become so much more meaningful, so much more purposeful, and really add a lot to our lives.
Right.
Because every mitzvah is meant to inform, to inspire, and to transform our lives. And this is the final, probably least intuitive, but in my opinion, almost most important aspect of the meditation conversation. The moment of mindfulness before the mitzvah and the way the mitzvah molds our mind itself. My dear friends, I want to thank you. You've been wonderful. I couldn't have asked for a better crowd to help us go through this important, enriching discussion. I don't know about you, but for me, it's been very big. I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot.
Me too.
And so I want to just give a few
Me too.
final. Thank
It's
you.
been wonderful. Yes.
Thank
This
you.
Very
course
enjoyable.
has been wonderful.
And just a reminder, all of our discussions are
Been
on.
wonderful, Rabbi.
I just want to give a few final closing thoughts, but I wanted to just thank you now because it really means a lot to have you along for the ride. So we started by asking about the tension between action and mindfulness, or tension and meditation. And although we said Judaism seems to break down the actions as actions, there's a lot of mindfulness involved. A mitzvah to be activated, to work, needs a meditation. It's almost like a battery. You know, you have a tool or some kind of new toy, your cell phone. It's wonderful. Without a battery, it doesn't work. Well, imagine mindfulness or meditation as a battery that activates the mitzvah. And every mitzvah can awaken us to important values. And so in conclusion, meditation is an important central tenet of Judaism. It helps us, like we said in lesson 1, maintain a positive disposition. It can help us control our emotions by directing our thoughts in constructive and productive ways. It can help us hold at bay unproductive negative emotions. I want to remind you, remember we discussed sometimes those emotions are actually helpful because they spur us to being constructive or taking care of what needs to be done. But short of that, it's always good to channel our minds towards positivity. And that actually has a law of an attraction, which can actually contribute and create positivity in our lives. Meditation helps us find our spiritual center, so to speak. It can help us connect with our deeper sense of purpose and mission, the importance of our existence. Meditation can help us live in the moment. Instead of always thinking about the next moment, we can really try to be present. Meditation helps inform us or inform everything that we do for the better. That's full of a sense of purpose and importance. It can make our Jewish life more meaningful, full of life and excitement. And I hope you'll take some of the tools, some of the ideas we've discussed, and I hope you'll incorporate it into your life so that it would benefit you even more. And my dear friends, when we are improved, when we are more well-adjusted, when we're more positive, when we're more present, everyone around us gains. Because although we might not be talking to others about meditation, but it creates an environment. We have the power to create the world around us. And that's why meditation that makes us more grounded doesn't just change us, it changes our world, it changes our personal world. And then, of course, the power of the ripple effect, our positivity, our sense of purpose, mindfulness, and spirituality. The world needs all of those things. And there's a big shortage of sober, mature, altruistic thinking. We can really be part of the change we hope to see in our universe. And so, my dear friends, I want to again thank you so much for being along for the ride. It's really very special. For those that are joining via the recording, thank you for sticking through the recording to the end. And I look forward to any follow-up discussions. I'm going to stop the sharing of the screen, and I'm going to unpin myself so we can hopefully see everybody here.
Rabbi, this has been the most wonderful course. I think this was really a fabulous course, and I appreciate your teaching it because you did a fabulous, wonderful job, and I loved every minute of it.
Thank you so much. I'm very touched. And I remember before we started, we weren't sure if we were going to do this one, right? But I'm so glad that you stuck
This
it
one
through.
was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Seconded.
Yeah, we seconded, Rabbi. We loved it.
Yep.
Loved it.
You are all hereby certified in the art of Jewish meditation.
Right.
And
Right.
I can attest that Jewish meditation is the keystone to my meditation, even before I realized it was Jewish meditation many
Mhm.
years ago, but it really
Incredible.
was.
Incredible. Well, you have, like we described, the ability to peel back and just to feel the neshama. And so
Mhm.
we have that. Well, thank
And
you
you
all.
brought-
Dr. Moskowitz,
Yeah.
thank you. You're muted, but thank you for being here. Please send my love to Aviva. Barbara, good to see you. Please send my love to Jeff. Tell him I don't know if you can hear us, but to the Cohens, the Nashes, Hetty, so good to see you, Lynn. Sheila, you're in the car?
I am in a car driving, but I enjoyed your course so much,
I'm so-
Rabbi.
You're in the
And,
car?
Yeah,
I'm so grateful that you're with us. Where are you? Because it's still light outside where you are.
around the city, around New York someplace.
What?
Where?
Where is that?
Just driving around a little bit.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
it's so good to have you along for the, well, I guess we're along for your ride.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.